Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Black and White, a comparison of LEED and green globes, presented to you by the Green Building Research Institute. My name is Susan, and I will be the moderator for today's course. Before we begin today's course, allow me to introduce today's presenter. Kayla Gerstenberg is the Director of International Affairs for GBRI. Kayla holds a degree in Business Administration from Texas A&M University Corpus Christi and is also a LEED Green Associate. Kayla's goal is to spread knowledge of green building and sustainability practices worldwide. She believes we can each educate others by setting an environmentally friendly example in our everyday lives. Kayla has done in-depth analysis of the Green Globes and LEED V4 rating systems, among others in the industry. She's excited to share with you today her findings. Now that you are familiar with today's presenter, let's look at the course description. This course is designed as an introduction to the Green Building Incentives Green Globes rating system, as well as LEED v 4.0. The course will compare the salient features of both rating systems and highlight the evaluation and certification process for projects. We will examine both rating systems as they apply to various project types and conclude with analysis of a case study of a project certified under Green Globes and another project certified under LEED v 4.0.
All right, well, thank you so much, Susan. I really appreciate that introduction. And hello, everyone. Welcome to today's course. I think Susan has done a great job of laying out how we will navigate the 3 rounds today, examining LEED version 4.0 and Green Globes rating systems. So let's go ahead and begin with the background and history of both of those rating systems and organizations. Okay, let's begin with the chronological history of both of the rating systems we'll discuss today. So though both of them have a lot of similarities that we'll discuss, their pasts actually vary quite a bit. So let's begin by looking at the history of LEED. So if we go back to 1993, the U.S. Green Building Council was founded. So the Green Building Council continued to work throughout the 1990s, and rolling into 1998, the USGBC had its very first pilot project test run the original version of the Green Building Rating System, which would later be named LEED. After further fine-tuning from 98 to 2000, LEED, or Leadership in Energy and Environmental Design, was established. From 2000 to 2009, they continued to modify the rating systems as it was being used. So as projects were gaining certification and as professionals were gaining accreditation, they continued to improve on that system. And in 2009, LEED version 3 was rolled out. So version 3, or version 2009, saw really major changes and expansions from the previous versions of LEED. In November of 2013, at Greenbuild in Philadelphia, LEED version 4.0 was unveiled. This was a very anticipated debut. The rating system was actually set to debut in 2012, but due to delays, it got pushed to 2013, actually to the end of 2013. So by November, everyone in the industry was very much looking forward to seeing what the new LEED was all about, and I'm happy to be here today to discuss some of that with you. So that brings us up to date on LEED. Now let's take a look at Green Globes history. So this has a little more of a complicated history. In 1996, BREEAM was adopted for Canadian use. So BREEAM stands for the British Research Establishment Environmental Assessment Method. And this was really the genesis of Green Globes. From 1996 to 2002, the Canadian system underwent numerous changes and adjustments before becoming Green Globes for existing buildings, which debuted in 2002. Green Globes didn't really make its way to the United States until 2004, when GBI, or the Green Building Initiative, acquired the rights to distribute Green Globes in the United States. In 2013, the GSA recommended Green Globes as an equivalent to LEED in their recommendations. Actually, we'll be discussing this point specifically a little later today, so for now we'll leave that. But I hope this gives you kind of an idea of where both of these organizations come from and where these rating systems have their roots. Now let's take a look at the leadership of each of the organizations. Rick Fedrizzi was appointed the president and CEO of the USGBC in April of 2004. Since his time with the USGBC, he's tripled the membership of the organization, as well as seen other successes, both for him professionally and for the organization. Jerry Udelson was appointed the president and CEO of GBI less than 1 month ago. He's following Ward Hubble, who served as a rather controversial CEO for many years over GBI. Some of you may also be aware that Jerry is a lead fellow who was previously tied to the USGBC himself. A logical place for us to start looking at this two rating system comparison might be with what project types can even get certified with them. We can begin our conversation looking at the LEED v4 project types that can get certification. So the first thing you might notice here is that they are organized into 4 different categories. The first, BD&C, or Building Design and Construction. The second, EB-O&M, or Existing Buildings Operations and Maintenance. The third, ID&C, or Interior Design and Construction. And the final and fourth is ND, or Neighborhood Development. Each of the project types that are qualified for earning LEED certification fall under one of these 4 umbrella terms, if you will. So under BD&C, we see the new construction as well as core and shell projects fall here. The BD&C category also offers certification for healthcare facilities, retail and hospitality, warehouse and distribution centers, schools, homes, and mid-family low-rise and mid-rise buildings also fall under BD&C for LEED version 4. This is a change as compared to LEED version 2009, but that will be a different conversation. So for BD&C, those are the project types we can currently get certified. When we move to existing buildings, operations, and maintenance, we do see, obviously, existing buildings, as well as several of the same facilities we saw under BD&C. So we have hospitality, data centers, warehouse and distribution centers, schools, as well as retail. For ID&C, we have a shorter list of possible spaces that can earn certification. We have commercial interiors, hospitality, and retail spaces. For neighborhood development, this is quite unique, and as you can see here, there are 2 different project types that fall under this category. It would be neighborhood development plan and neighborhood development project. So this, to my knowledge, is the most up-to-date list of the various project types that can earn certification with LEED version 4. At this point, I'd like for us to go ahead and take a look at our case studies. We're going to begin with the Green Globes case study, followed by a LEED version 4.0 case study. So this is actually the Portland Veterans Affairs building, so the Portland VA. This is a 1,532,000 square foot building that was built in 1987. It has 11 stories, you can see in this image. This was certified under Green Globes in 2009. So the first step in earning their certification under Green Globes was to complete their environmental protocol questionnaire for the continual improvement of existing buildings. This is an online tool that GBI utilizes. So that's the very first step. An initial score of at least 35% will allow this project or any project to enter into the formal certification process with Green Globes. So this project had no issue achieving the 35%. And the next step was to have a third-party Green Globes assessor carry out the process of evaluating and assessing the facility. So once they've accomplished and met all of their sustainable goals, they ask the assessor to do this analysis and evaluate the entire building based on the actual performance data. So this functions as somewhat of an audit. So once the audit was completed by the assessor, a final score of 83.85% was appointed to this project. So they earned 3 Green Globes as a certification.
So first up on the list, we'll review the impact categories that have shaped LEED version 4. Previously, the LEED standard has been focused on reducing negative impacts, But with the development of version 4, USGBC has shifted its focus to a more visionary approach of maximizing positive impacts. This has resulted in a list of 7 impact categories, which basically served as the driving factors behind the development of version 4 and will continue to guide the future evolution of LEED. The LEED impact categories, which are listed here, represent the optimal performance of a building with regards to the natural environment, human health, society as a whole, and the economy. Now, it isn't imperative that you memorize the impact categories, but I felt it was important to include them as the first on our list so that we all have an understanding of what USGBC is trying to accomplish, since we also essentially agreed to adopt this mission through our involvement with LEED. And now we'll get into the nuts and bolts of project certification. So next up, we'll talk about project registration. As I mentioned in the introduction, the phase-in of version 4 will be a gradual process. This transition can obviously lead to confusion about which version of the program a project falls under. So to clarify the situation, existing projects that are currently registered under version 2009 can continue to pursue certification based on the version 2009 requirements. However, these project teams have the opportunity to experiment with the version 4 requirements by substituting version 4 credits for the version 2009 credits that they would normally pursue. I'll go over this process more in a minute. Now, new projects have the option to pursue certification under either version until June 1st, 2015. A project team will most likely want to consider their specific project and how confidently they think they can meet the version 4 requirements before deciding how to register their projects. So June 1st, 2015 is an important date to remember. All projects registered after June 1st, 2015 will be required to follow the version 4 standard. As I mentioned, project teams working on existing projects under the version 2009 standard can try their hand at meeting version 4 requirements through credit substitution. This is a great opportunity for these teams to gain experience with version 4 before having to completely switch over to the new version. Now, only certain credits are approved for substitution, and a list of these approved credit substitutions can be found by following the link at the bottom of this slide. This link will also take you to a page on the USGBC website, which has detailed instructions about how to complete a credit substitution. I'll go over the process briefly here, but if you are on a project team that is pursuing a credit substitution, I would highly suggest consulting this webpage for further guidance. USGBC has developed LEED to be a building standard that can be used around the world, which it has. There are LEED projects in more than 135 different countries. The release of version 4 has provided USGBC an opportunity to further fulfill its goal of providing a truly international building program. If you'll be working on projects abroad, it may be helpful to know about 2 changes that will make it easier to determine if your project is meeting the requirements for certification. First off, LEED version 4 recognizes global standards for certain credits and will accept compliance with these standards as meeting the credit requirements. Rather than just listing US-based standards, the reference guides will now include international standards such as ISO standards, for example, that the project teams may follow. Regional and local equivalencies to the reference standards may also be allowed for specific countries. Secondly, USGBC has integrated the metric system into all tools and resources available to project teams, which will make it easier to adapt the LEED standard to foreign projects. Project teams can select which system of measurement they'd like to use when they register their project through LEED online. One of the issues that critics of LEED sometimes point out is that compliance with the standard may not necessarily result in better building performance. Well, USGBC may now have a solution to this issue, and it comes in the form of a performance tracking app called LEED Dynamic Plaque. LEED Dynamic Plaque enables project stakeholders and team members to track real-time building performance. This data is used to generate a LEED performance score, which is an indicator of the actual performance of the building. In comparison, the LEED rating that determines the project certification level is an indicator of the predicted performance of a building or project. The LEED performance score is based on a scale from 1 to 100. The higher the score, the better the building is performing. The pillars that make up the score are energy use, water consumption, waste management, transportation, and human experience, or in other words, occupant satisfaction. By measuring and tracking the performance of the building, the project team is able to use LEED Dynamic Plaque to identify areas where improvements can be made. LEED Dynamic Plaque may be used for any project that has been previously certified, regardless of the program type or the version of the standard. The only projects that Dynamic Plaque is not equipped to represent are those certified under LEED for Homes and LEED for Neighborhood Development. To set up LEED Dynamic Plaque, the project team first needs to register by emailing contact@leedon.io. Once the project team is logged in, the app can pull in basic project information from LEED Online. Project performance data can either be tracked in real time or entered manually. In order to generate a LEED performance score, the project team has to provide a minimum amount of data over the course of 12 months, including energy and water consumption, results from at least one waste audit and one indoor air quality audit, and results from a transportation and satisfaction survey. There is no requirement on the frequency of the data feed, but it should be noted that LEED Dynamic Plaque is only as dynamic as the data it receives. To help collect transportation and satisfaction data, USGBC has built a simple survey for project teams to use. The survey is web-based and can be distributed via email. The responses auto-populate into the data input section and can only be viewed by project teams. A nice feature and benefit of LEED Dynamic Plaque is that it can be displayed publicly, like in the entryway of a LEED-certified office building. Although project teams aren't required to publicly display Dynamic Plaque in the LEED performance score, doing so is a good opportunity to show leadership and increase public awareness of LEED. And this brings us to the 10th and final point, professional accreditation. If you are currently a LEED professional, or if you will be seeking accreditation in the near future, you may be wondering how LEED version 4 will affect you. Hopefully this section will answer any questions you may have. In all honesty, not a lot of changes have been made to the LEED accreditation process. There are still 3 levels of LEED professionals: LEED Green Associates, LEED APs with Specialties, and LEED Fellows. As I mentioned before, even though residential projects have been moved under the umbrella of LEED B, D, and C, the LEED for Homes Specialty still seems like a viable option for LEED APs wanting to focus on the residential sector. To become an accredited LEED professional, you still need to apply for and pass an exam. The fees for the exam, which are listed here on this slide, don't appear to have changed. Once you become accredited, you will need to complete and report continuing education hours to keep your accreditation active. The continuing education requirements also haven't changed. LEED Green Associates need to complete 15 hours of continuing education within 2 years, and LEED APs must complete 30 hours, also within 2 years.